from Rebel Love, and this is the Rebel Love podcast. Today, my guest is Stuart Motola. So Stuart is a coach, an author, a speaker, an entrepreneur who works with men considering whether to save or leave their marriages. Welcome, Stuart. How are you?
I am excellent. Thank you for having me on your show.
No worries. I'm actually really excited to speak with you because, I think that fundamentally men and women think differently. And so it's always like really nice to get a peek inside somebody who works with men, particularly because you not only get to peek in one man's brain, but into a lot of men's brains. So yeah, I'm really super interested to hear from your perspective because obviously I'm a woman and I only know what that feels like. So really, really happy to hear.
Sure.
Yeah, really, really happy to hear. And I think this is a really great topic to discuss. So love and marriage.
What is the topic first off? I mean, I know what it is, but I didn't hear you say it. So
yeah, so today we're going to talk about, well, you work with men and considering whether to save or leave their marriages. But what we want to
amongst
discuss
other
today,
things, I mean,
yeah, okay. Well, let's talk about that. But today I want to talk about love and marriage from a man's perspective. So we're going to go into that a little bit more. But before we do, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and like what you actually do with these men you help?
Sure. So I'm, in the most concise phrase, a men's relationship coach. And, there's a lot of guys out there struggling in relationship. They have never been taught these relational skills. They've only been taught how to kick ass at work or really make stuff happen. And in the relationship realm, a lot of times guys are actually feeling like their partner has the one up and they have the one down. And some of that has to do with, upbringing. Women have more access to all of their emotions, men having access to a few. We could get more into detail about that later. But yeah, relationality is not a very highly prestigious or prized thing in traditional masculinity. And dudes are suffering because of that. And I'll go on because I believe you also wanted me to speak briefly to how I got into this.
Yeah, please.
Well, I was always a seeker. 23, I ended up in Lakota Native American sweat lodges, was on that journey for a while. I always had, cultural sensitivity to being a white guy on that path, but there was a crew who basically said, this was offered to all people. At 33, I noticed that in that spiritual path, I didn't feel a lot of like-minded people. And so I started going to men's gatherings with the Men's Leadership Alliance out of Boulder, Colorado. And that was me looking around and being like, I don't got any dudes in my life who I can really talk about my stuff with and lean into. And so in that circle, it was just beautiful to see dudes talking about stuff that was vulnerable, they felt weak about, and it was through talking about it they got, access to their strength. So, we hear it often: access your weakness, and that's where your strength lives. And so that was a whole new way of manhood. That was super cool for me to see. And 18 years later, I, still sit in a men's group, and I need I sometimes say my band of brothers,
I love that. So you basically sorted out, you kind of identified that you wanted to go deeper and then sort out these experiences and that
Yes.
kind of shaped where you are today. I love that. Awesome.
Yeah, I was only going to spend so much time in a bar watching sports games. I just didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, definitely. I want to go back to something you said before. You said a lot of men feel like they are one-upped by their partner. Can you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean by
just
one-upped?
on the most basic level, when it comes to talking out challenges, let's say there's a relational conflict, a perception, you said, she said, he said, she said, and within 3 to 4 minutes, the dude's like just spinning. He just feels like she's so much more capable with words. She has access to talking about her emotions in a way that, as a guy, I typically don't. I want to say typically, that's changing a lot. It's been said that the millennials are the most emotionally intelligent generation of men beyond other praises or criticisms, but that's one thing that they have definitely been raised with more access to relationality. And by that, I mean the ability to communicate how you're feeling without a charge, and knowing like, yeah, I got the charge, and you know what, I can sit with that, deal with that. I don't have to project it onto my partner. And you know what, stuff's going to actually flow better. There's going to be less fights, etc. But yeah, it's not long before a guy can feel like he is, I'm sorry, just a sec here. Okay, we're good. I got a little like window cord wood knock thing that's knocking there. But it's not long before a dude feels like, whoa, what? He can't even follow the words anymore, and he's just checking out.
Right.
And so that's one place where he feels like a woman can just talk circles around him.
Mm-hmm.
Other places, I think a lot of times, because there's something called the man box. Have you seen the Tony Porter TED talk about the man box?
No, not yet.
Just basically like, if you just take the 4 basic emotions of fear, joy, sadness, and anger. Well, a dude was given one in a traditional masculine upbringing. He was allowed to be angry, tough guy. Tough guy's angry. Tough guy kicks butt. Sadness was a wimp. Joy might have been gay. And then fear was wimpy too.
Right.
So you go from age, I don't know, shoot, you still see dads telling their 1-year-old, stop crying.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's not good to do. You're screwing up your kid. Gotta let the emotions flow. They pass like the weather, and without access to those 3 other emotions, there's less emotional fluidity often for a man that he can spend the rest of his life recovering. And
That
it
makes
can
a
make
lot
it
of
really
sense.
challenging to be in relationship because you don't know what the hell you're feeling.
Yeah, and you've never really processed it before.
Yeah, one of the ways I coach is I'll talk about the 4 cylinders. Like, get your 4 cylinders firing. Your head, everyone's got that. Your heart, that can be tough for dudes. Your gut, and then straight up your balls, that passion, that fire, that intensity. And I want to be clear, it's not just sexuality, it's also the spark. What are you fighting for? What are you waking up for every day? So I'll just talk about those 4 cylinders with guys, and then they have more data, more access. Oh, I know what the hell's going on in me. Now I can be in a relationship, because if I don't know what's going on with me, how the hell am I going to try to connect with you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I had one of my ex-partners would say that to me. He said, I'd ask him what was going on, and he'd say, Talia, I don't even know what's going on with me. So how can I communicate? Yeah. And you know what though? Him saying that really helped me, because I was like, oh, thanks. That's all I needed to hear, is that, you haven't got quite figured out yet. And when you do, you'll let me know. And he's like, exactly. And I was like, sweet, no worries. It's not a problem, because that level of communication is helpful for me.
Nice.
I want to go back to again something you said before. I don't want to get too off track,
Sure.
but this is really interesting. So you're talking about the men having conversations with their partners and being in a state of like, she's talking, rings around me. So what about the opposite man who shuts down and says nothing? Like, because I think that in a way, from my personal experience and what I've heard a lot of other women say who are hetero, is that that's more intense for them, is when the man just completely shuts down.
Yeah. Call
so
that
how do you
the stoic type?
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating.
And I've coached some engineers, and I just think that it sometimes fits that profile. Um, again, can be just like pulling it out, just like, dude, you got to get in touch with that stuff because it's killing you and it's killing your relationship. So, I often do the equation of, okay, you go to the gym, you don't bench press 250 immediately. Let's start just curling those 10 pounders. Okay, so you're going to have a daily practice every day, and a daily practice is one of the requirements I have of any man who works with me. And I call it daily conscious solo time. Unconscious solo time is checking the web, watching a movie, etc. Conscious solo time is going in, seeing what's going on inside. So I'll have those guys like, and that's a key thing about what I do and where I distinguish myself as a coach versus therapy. I'm always giving guys action items, practices. You have to integrate this into your life in order to have it stick. You can't just show up for the hour once a week. And so a big part of what I do is I create implementation plans, action items, clear milestones. How do I get a guy a tangible win? Because dudes don't want to do this stuff if they don't get quick, clear results and tangible wins. So I had some really nice conversations with some clients recently who said, yeah, I saw 3 therapists. I might have made progress there, but I had no idea. And within 3 months, I got a clear understanding of how I was making progress with you. And it motivated me to show up more.
Right. That makes sense.
And so for that guy, hey, week 1, week 2, week 3, you got a thread of knowing what's going on with you, Mr. Stoic. Awesome. Let's celebrate. 10%. Let's grow it to 12, 15, right. 18, 20. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, within 6 weeks, now you know what you're feeling 70% of the time. And there is some deeper shadow work to uncover, some guys it was just never safe to have any feelings.
Yeah.
So we got to rewire that story and work with that old patterning. And so, yeah, we got to go deep, and we also got to keep it happening every day.
Mm-hmm. Consistent.
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
it makes sense. I want to come back to that, but I want to ask you now. So in your book, Fixing You is Killing Me, you tell us your save it or leave it story. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I met my ex-wife at 22. I was just out of college, moved to San Francisco from University of Michigan. I grew up in New York, Long Island, and then we were together 5 years. We got married at 27, had a kid at 30. She had a ton of chronic illness, autoimmune, childhood PTSD, gallbladder disease, West Nile. It just kept coming. We had medical bankruptcy. She's an amazingly strong woman and she functioned well, for the most part, fairly well. But I just had to hold so much in the house, running a 7-figure business, shopping, cooking, laundry, and I was by nature, I was the archetype of the rescuer. I got my self-esteem based on how I was making others happy and how I was fixing shit. And eventually it hit a point where I was like washing dishes over the sink, looking into my suburban backyard in Boulder, Colorado. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to fucking die here. Can I curse on this thing?
Yeah. Yes, you can.
Like, I am going to die here. Something's got to change. And I want to be clear, a save or leave it decision is often not just like, I'm out later.
Right.
It's a process. It took 2.5 to 3 years till we actually divorced. There were attempts. There was speaking of truth. There was speaking of what wasn't working. There was couples therapy, but at that, what would I say? When the pain of staying the same is, greater than the pain of change, I think it might've been Tony Robbins who said that, or
it
someone.
is Tony Robbins. Yeah.
And that's just what it was. It was like, I'm going to die, and I'm dying actually already slowly. And I'm finally willing to not be the jerk who blows up a family, the father whose kid hates him. I mean, that's the hugest thing for guys. They
Yeah.
don't want to be the asshole who blows up the family. And you know, even the adulterer guys, they don't want to do that, but they, you know, they're you know, in that they're not thinking things out, you know. Well, anyway, so
Yeah.
I knew I needed to change at that point.
Yeah. Wow. So you did try to do all those things. Like you said, you went to therapy. Like, can I ask you at that point at the dishes when you had that kind of revelation, um, did you think I want to try and make this work first? Is that why you went to therapy, or were you kind of like, half like, oh my gosh, this is actually not where I want to
Great
be?
question. I think I was clear I wanted to get the hell out.
Right, right.
And I also wanted to honor
Of course.
20, 18 years of union. You know, he was like, you know, this is the least I want to do is give it its due, work at it. And I do say the hardest thing I ever did was leave the woman I loved,
Yeah.
because I still loved her, you know. And that's a big thing I talk about too, is you know, I call it a big love versus a shadow love. You know, a lot of us say, well, I still love her. Well, yeah, but every day is a shit zone and you're miserable and she's miserable. That's shadow love. That's like, it ain't working. You're projecting your stuff onto her. You guys are beating each other up. Yeah, there's tons of love there, but it ain't a big love. A big love that actually has you feeling expanded, um, clear of the value of the union, um, just feeling like, fuck, I love this woman.
Yeah. 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 And can I ask you about that feeling? Because a lot of people say that feeling is really like the honeymoon phase. So, and then after all of those endorphins, kind of wear off after maybe like the 3-year mark, then after that is the real test of time if the relationship's going to last. So does that feeling of like, wow, this, I just know this person's the one, what would you say to people after that 3-year mark? Like what happens then? And, I mean, my belief is that you really just, it's like anything, you need to keep working on it. And you need, in my opinion, you need to keep growing in the same direction for it to work, because people change, right? People change, whether you want to believe it or not, they do change. So if you're changing in opposite directions, then that's when things kind of start going pear-shaped. But when you're changing together and like communicating about the change and enjoying the change and seeing the evolution, then that's when things become, really deep and exciting still. And maybe the passion might not be the same as when you first got together, but there's other things that are, valuable, I guess.
Right. So if I'm clear, you're asking me about how do you deal with the post-honeymoon phase?
Yeah. Yeah. What's your, like, first of all, from your own personal experience, but then also like, do you have men who come to you after that, quite early on, or do the men who come to you like, 20 years down the track when they're like, had that dishes moment?
It could be, I mean, I could see guys at 5 to 8 years, but typically it's at a point where um, the house is on fire,
Yeah.
you know, because for
Yeah.
those are the guys I work with. The house is on fire. I don't know what the hell to do,
Right.
and I don't want to blow the mother up, but I just, and the interesting thing is our work actually is about helping them become powerful, sovereign men. And by sovereign, I mean in integrity, in alignment with their own wants and needs and identity. Now, the identity happens after they identify the wants and needs. And that alone can take a long time, because believe it or not, as much as women are trained to put themselves last and take care of the family and everything else, dudes have their own version of that in terms of making the money and all the crap they got to put up with to deal with a corporate career or attempt to make an income that's going to provide for their family. So they have their own version of that. So now I'll get to your question, but he's in his version of that. She's in her version. I mean, the nuclear family is just set up to be screwed these days, just everyone's got to work their butt off to make the economics work.
Yeah.
They're often not around aunties and uncles and grandparents or cousins. So it's like running two giant vessels, and she's on one vessel going out to sea, he's on the other, and suddenly they're invisible to one another, and they've been invisible for a long time. And I wrote a blog called The Unlived Life of the Couple. They stopped dreaming together, they stopped communicating. And so that's what I see in the post-honeymoon phase often. And that's when guys come to me. I don't know who the hell I am anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's been so much emphasis on providing, sacrificing, etc. And I don't know who I am anymore. We never have sex. I can never make her happy. She sees the one thing I didn't do. She had a list of 10 things, and I did all 9 of them, but I didn't get that last. So I don't go down victim consciousness here, like poor guy, blah, blah, blah. But it's more, there's just an honest expression of where guys are feeling really beat up in modern marriages, where women, granted, they're struggling. A lot of them are having a lot of chronic illness. They're having to deal with this masculine culture that's brutal. And, they can't relax into their feminine half the time. But precisely because they can't relax into their feminine, they're doing a bam, bam. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you, So I had another blog, Are You Married to a Drill Sergeant? And again, I want to be clear to anybody listening. This is midlife. You usually see this kind of stuff. For those of you in your 20s or 30s, I get it. It's a different scenario. And don't paint me as some old fogey. I'm just telling you what you're going to be looking forward to in about 15 years.
Hopefully not, if you listen to this episode.
Well, I think there are societal constructs that none of us can escape. What we can do is, with diligence and vigilance, we can work with those constructs so that they don't destroy what's sacred to us, our marriage, our family, our children. A parent today has to decide something like 12 times a week or 17 times, like executive decisions, if their kid could be on this app or be on that app, or what control they have, or if they're doing. My partner right now has that, and she's like, I'm so grateful I can check in with you about this stuff, because on my own I'll go crazy. But back to the post-honeymoon couple, I just want to be clear. I mentioned all this other stuff because that's in the mix. And we can't just isolate a relationship in a petri dish without the environment of Western civilization today. But I will say, for any couple out there, if you can schedule 20 to 30 minutes once a week, let's say Wednesday at 5:30 before dinner, the kids are watching TV, or if you got no kids and you're single, just do a check-in. He talks 7 minutes, she reflects what she heard, 7 minutes, switch. Connect deeply and intentionally, so you know what the hell's going on in each other's lives, and you both feel seen and heard, and you don't feel invisible to one another. And it's a muscle. And ironically, I did it when I was leaving my marriage with my ex-wife. And it's part of how we got through a divorce, would have family dinners afterwards, be laughing with our 14-year-old son, and be scratching our heads and be like, oh my God, how are we laughing, having fun as a family? And we're both like devastated inside that we're breaking up,
Yeah.
Well, it's because we saw each other. And that's a huge thing that I work on, is in relationship. Number one rule, well, two biggest things are the pause to notice what's going on with you. And the second is be connected. Don't be right.
Yeah. Give up being right. That was
Don't be right.
Yeah, that was a one huge lesson that had to learn as well. And it's really hard to give up being right when you know you're right and just like not make it about being right, you know, because the minute you do, it's just like two bulls locking horns and, you
You're
know,
no longer relational,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah, that
know,
was a
and
hard lesson
that's
for me, but
a big thing
valuable one.
too. I teach is personal empowerment, me consciousness versus relational consciousness, us. So
Hmm.
that third entity of the us. So I would say for anybody out there, post honeymoon, don't get invisible to one another. Check in once a week.
Yeah, I love
See
that.
into each other's inner world. And that check-in is not like, oh, I went to the market. Oh, I did this. No, it's how are you feeling? What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm stressed. The kid's this. There's this thing coming up. Work's tough. Feel exhausted. Well, holy crap. Now I'm done telling you I feel connected to you, and you just took off some of that exhaustion from me. I'm not feeling as exhausted anymore. And I
Hmm.
don't have to actually hide from you and my exhaustion, feeling crappy that I'm somehow not performing,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. And I just wanted to notice as well the way that you just kind of said that example was really it wasn't blaming. It was just explaining. It was just saying, hey, this is where I'm at. And it's not about like, well, you did this and you did that and you know, blah blah blah. I feel like that's a really important distinction to make there about that check-in. So
Yeah. And huge thing for anyone doing a check-in is like I statements, you know. You never say, well, you know, when you're feeling sad and you're down and out. No, when I'm feeling sad and I'm just
yeah.
so much more powerful. And, you know, at some level, this might sound like a bunch of new age hootie guru, but this is the hard work of relationship.
Yeah, it really doesn't. I think there's a huge difference to me. Someone saying, well, when you're late, I get pissed off instead of saying, you know, when you're late, I feel upset. Or, you know, when this
When you're late,
happens,
I don't feel important.
yeah, versus, you know, I get so angry and blah, blah, blah. And you did this to me. Like there's a very different, um, you know, way that the information is processed
It's an
when it's
adult
framed like
talking
that.
instead of a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised how many
There's a
children
lot
are
of
in adult
children out
bodies.
there in adult bodies.
That's right.
I'm one of them.
So I wanted to ask, what are some of the most common signs that a marriage can be saved when a man comes to you? And what are some of the most common signs that a marriage can't be saved? Where you're just like, you know, do you get a feeling for when guys come to you on how it's kind of going to go or?
Yeah, no, I have an initial gut, and I'd say, you know, 90% sure about that. Of course, things change, and you're tracking someone. Um, can be saved or is done for. I'm just feeling into both of those, tracking that. Um, the save part is, you know, is there a will? You know, has the dude just been so beaten down where the baggage is just so heavy he can't even lift it out of his way? He's just reached such a dynamic of challenge, struggle, and so that, like I said before, that shadow love is all he knows, and he doesn't really understand that there's another potential. Now the thing is, in our work, we're going to teach him. The big thing I teach is the drama triangle. I don't know if you know that: victim, perpetrator, rescuer, and typically something like that's going on. And so we work on how he's going to show up differently. And the dudes who have a chance of saving their marriages, um, the partner, because when one person leaves that triangle, so that's just basically a triangle of conflict that's unhealthy. When one person leaves that, there's nobody to fight with. You know, it's not possible. That whole takes two to tango.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll coach the guy on, like, listen, you do the rescuer thing, or you do the victim thing, or the perpetrator thing, and you get jacked up. So honestly, one of the hugest things I teach is how not to get hooked
Right.
as a dude, you know? And what do you know? Suddenly the guy's like, holy crap, this is amazing. I didn't get hooked. I'm so free. You know, he's like just so flipping amazed that something that simple could give him so much energy. And he's not spinning on her story.
Mm-hmm,
And of
mm-hmm.
course, vice versa, you know,
Yeah.
a
Can you
woman can spin on a man's story.
can you spell that out a little bit more and just really paint a picture of what an interaction of not taking the bait would look like, or not
Sure, she
engaging?
told me I'm emotionally unavailable. I feel like a victim because I'm never enough for her. I'm just, I let her talk for 17 minutes the other day and I didn't say a word. She says I'm not emotional. Well, you didn't say a word, dude. Did you even like reflect back to her? Did you even let her know you were there? Or whatever it is. But in that moment, he can feel like a victim. He can feel like he's getting beat up. You forgot the 10th item on the list, or you didn't get the kids this, or you didn't do that, or um, so any of those moments he can feel like a victim. He gets hooked when he starts to now doubt himself, his own capabilities, and he feels like he has to defend himself. And suddenly he's spinning on this story that she said, instead of being like, okay, I hear that's how you feel. You hear I'm not emotionally available. Um, yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way. Say more.
Right. Love
Tell me
that.
more. It makes me sad to think that you think I'm emotionally unavailable. And maybe in his head, he's thinking, and you're crazy. But I'm not going to say it. I'm going to stay present with you because I don't need to buy into that hook.
Right.
And I'm actually learning about relationality, which means I am trying to stay focused on us and not just me.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, totally present in that moment. Yeah, that's super helpful. And what are some, I think we went over like, signs that a marriage can be saved, so that willingness. I mean, obviously that's a really good
More of a will,
ingredient.
a will,
A will.
as opposed to a willingness. Like there's actually desire there. Like
Right.
I want this to work.
Right.
I see
Okay.
a good woman here, a good partner. Sometimes I work with gay men too.
Right.
And I see something worth fighting for,
Right. Okay.
and the worth fighting for, that motivates guys, Um, and on the leave side, when he's clear, it's just like, yeah, I've taken too many punches.
Right. The opposite. Yeah, I've lost that will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, it even really, I can really feel myself kind of like feeling sad hearing that, even though I'm not, kind of thinking of anyone in particular, but it's just like, when the relationships just run its course and you're like, I think it's better just if we step out. At that point, is your coaching more around like how to step out gracefully, or what happens at
Oh
that
yeah,
point?
big time, big time. My journey was very much about honoring my family. Um, so yes, I often coach men on, I mean, the model's called conscious uncoupling. But beyond that term is, remember, when you want to throw down the hatchet, that this is your child's mother.
Right. Yeah. That's really
This is not
important.
just this woman you're trying to get away from. Honor her, honor your family,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
do it in a good way. And a lot of times dudes do, believe it or not. And you had asked before also how guys are feeling like women have an upper hand. And I think for a lot of feminists, it feels preposterous to say that. But we're not talking societal. We're not talking careers. We're not talking the culture. We're not talking Hollywood. We're talking inside the invisible space of a home that nobody sees into.
Right.
That is the domain of two. In that space, he feels often with a lower hand. And look at the divorce stats. Women are
Mm-hmm.
initiating upwards of 70% of the divorces.
Yeah, right.
And it's been said college educated women, 90%. Women are just, they're like, I'm done. I'm out of
Yeah.
here. You're freaking clueless. You're emotionally checked out, and I want more.
Yeah.
And God bless them.
Yeah. And you can get it.
Um,
There are amazing men out there, amazing, conscious, incredible men. And yeah, I think that it's kind of like having that standard for yourself as a woman as well. Like I know that I'd rather be alone than be in the wrong relationship, quite personally. Um, I'm not willing to settle, but I know that a lot of people are out of fear, and I feel like that's a bit of a reflection on the work that needs to be done internally. I think if you're willing to, you'd rather be with somebody who you don't love than wait for the right person, the right fit for you.
yeah. And as you were talking, I was thinking of another thing with guys. They say the average guy has 1.2 friends. I don't know about the point two. That's like, but and women have like on average like 3.5 to 4 really good friends. And so what happens with dudes often, and again, it's a cultural phenomenon, he doesn't expose himself or reveal himself to anybody often except for his wife or partner. She gets an inside glimpse of his tenderness and vulnerability that nobody else gets to see. So if she pulls the plug, holy crap, he loses that part of himself too.
Yeah, wow, that is
He
such a
often doesn't have other people he can expose that to because you know what, he don't want to appear weak.
yeah, that is such a
I
profound
say that sarcastically, of
thing
course.
to remember. Yeah, wow. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Actually, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, because a friend of mine just said that. She said her partner is jealous of her relationship with me, because we're very close. And she said, yeah. And I said, wow, really? And she said, yeah, he just doesn't have anyone, and he sees the closeness that we have, and he just doesn't have that with anybody. And so, he's got nothing outside of the marriage and the kids. And I think that's a really kind of tough place to be. You've got your work life, your family life, but then no kind of like friend interaction or private reflection time, or no one's kind of got you back who's in your court, who isn't your partner.
Yeah, and there are tons of men's groups. Men's movement's pretty big in Australia, actually. Um,
Yeah,
but
it is,
it
totally is
ain't
in
that
Australia.
simple, because to get a guy to now show up and be in this space where people are saying things and his wiring's like, this is messed up. What the hell's going on here? And that's just a growth. Exercise a new muscle.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a tough challenge for a lot of guys,
Oh, sorry.
and it's something I highly recommend. Because then all the burdens. Actually, I was reading an article. I want to say it was like Harper's or the Atlantic, how women were basically telling their dudes, "I'm sick of being everything for you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be your therapist. I don't want to be your
Your
your bro,
mother.
be your everything. Go
Yeah.
find some friends."
Yeah. Yeah.
Burden on our relationship.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I was just talking to someone on my team about that, and we were talking about cultures, because my background's Italian and her background is she's Puerto Rican, and and we were talking about how, like, in those cultures, in our personal experience, the women are very kind of nurturing, so they really play that mothering role. And she was saying that when her relationship ended, she felt she did everything for him, and she just felt there was so much more hurt there because of the way she felt. And I said to her, I think that's a really interesting topic to talk about, because I see that a lot in Italian communities, or European communities as well, where there's they're very mothery. And I used to be a behavioral therapist, and one of my clients mother, she was also Italian, and she did everything for her son. And I used to try to explain to her that, like, he actually has a disability, so he actually needs to practice this stuff without you doing it. And I know that you think that you're helping him, but you're actually taking away an opportunity for him to learn how to do it on his own. And I couldn't really get through to her.
Wait,
And
you said that to her?
I did say that to her. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And
Good
she
for
and
you.
she sorry.
Good for you. Hopefully she
Well,
didn't smack you.
well, we had a very close
That was bad, man.
relationship, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have said it. But she did get where I was coming from, and she was like, oh, when I framed
Right.
it like that, she was like, oh, because I was like, I'm here and I'm working with him, and every single piece of therapy that we do is an opportunity for him to grow and learn. And when we take those away, he misses out, basically. And so obviously it's not the same in a relationship, because it's not like you're not there to teach someone, so it's a kind of different scenario there. But
Well, there are women who, they fold their husband's laundry, they cook all their meals, they get them, I mean, obviously it's really old school, but the amount of guys who can't cook eggs, it's
yeah.
not that uncommon.
Yeah, and I think there's a fine line, because like I haven't been in a relationship for a while now, but I actually love looking after my partner, but I think it comes to the point where it's expected. That's when the real drifts start happening, is when someone expects you to do things for you versus, like there's this I don't know if you're familiar with it. There's a movie in Australia called The Castle. And the guy, he's just so appreciative of everything his wife does. She cooks dinner and he's like, oh, love, this is beautiful. What did you make? And she's like, oh, thanks, doll. And he's like, oh, what is this? And, what's this seasoning? Oh, or what's this flavor? And she goes, oh, seasoning. And it was just and it's this big thing, and it's just so sweet how every single thing she does for him, he's just so appreciative, and he's always said, thank you so much. Like I realize and I recognize that you're doing something for me. It's not something that's expected, and I mean, I don't know if other people took that from that movie, but it's
Sure,
it's
sure.
absolute cult classic. But
And as you're
yeah.
talking, I'm just tracking that whole masculine and feminine, which we haven't talked much about,
Yeah, let's talk
um,
about that. Do you feel like talking about that?
Sure. I mean, the biggest way I'll help a guy reclaim some of his power in his relationship, and I want to be clear, that power is a power that works for the partner as well. It's not just a me power. It's how can I'm basically training men how to become themselves as relational leaders in their relationships, which basically means when the talking gets started, bring your masculine clarity to ground it. Bring your masculine clarity to create a container or structure for it. She's going to love you for it, because she don't want to spin with 1,000 words. And again, I want to be clear. This is not all women. This is not all men.
Sure.
But this is a pattern that I see often, where she's going to spin on something and he's going to then go spin with her. But instead, he can take his masculine clarity and say, okay, why don't you check in with me for 5 minutes so I can really hear what you're saying, so that you really feel heard. Or his masculine clarity might be like, hey, I'm not available to have this conversation right now. Can we have it in an hour so I can give you the best of me? I want you to have the best of me. Right now, I'm distracted trying to fix this lawnmower in the garage or whatever the hell's going on. That was a cliche.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I've noticed in relationality, a lot of times men can bring grounding into difficult conversations or conflict, but they don't know that they can, because they've never been taught this stuff.
Right.
And that sounds like it is tactical stuff and strategy stuff, but it can help make daily interactions or conflicts or weekly conflicts, monthly conflicts more fluid. And I like to say, one of the greatest builders of trust between a couple is their ability to just navigate conflict fluidly.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, we just got through that. Nothing blew up. The house is not on fire.
Yeah.
God damn, I love you, woman.
Yeah. 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 I think it's what do you think of, actually, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think of you read the Love Languages book?
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? Because I read.
I like it. I think it's good, like frosting on top, but I don't think it's the core cake. I think people try to take it for the cake. But I think it's really great information, and it can definitely make a great ingredient. um, to get it. But I think intuitively we know it already
Yeah. Oh,
if
I
we're
think,
paying attention.
yeah, I
You
think,
know, if we're paying attention, for sure, it helps to have those five articulated. I mean, what is it? Gifts, actions, touch, words. I don't know what the fifth one
and
is.
quality time.
Yeah, I think it's great stuff. But I think if I'm in touch with my wants and needs, I know that already.
Mm-hmm.
And what I think about more, and this is a big thing I teach, is congruence between a couple. Like, do you like to do the same stuff? Do you share anything? You know, do you like to go fishing together, or like, do you dream together? And that's back to that invisible post-honeymoon version that we often see, where both sides are spinning, trying to get their stuff done, and I got to deal with you now, as opposed to, yeah, well, we got that next big trip planned. We love to travel, or we want to do this exciting thing for our kid, and there's a sense of team. But when there's dreaming and there's communication and visibility to one another, um, I think we inherently know our partner's love language. So while, again, I think that's awesome stuff, I don't think it's the bones of a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Awesome,
That's my
awesome.
opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I love it, love it. So I just want to go back to something else that you appeared on an episode of Web Talk Radio where you talked about the myth that you can make your partner happy and how it actually causes a lot of that pain and suffering. Can you expand on that a little bit? And also my second question to do with that is, what can we do instead?
Yeah, so I actually have a big chapter in my book about that, and just because I happen to have a copy here,
Mm-hmm.
wrench through the heart, fixing is killing me. Um,
That's a great image, by the way.
it ain't the Cupid arrow, it's the wrench.
Yeah. Bluntly forced through.
Yeah, so real quick, it's the whole idea of you complete me, and we get just barraged with it. I think in my generation, it was from the age of maybe, yeah, probably not different, but the age of 8, whether it's movies, pop songs, I would die. I will die. Was it Prince? Without you.
Oh yeah.
I'm losing it for a sec. But any, pop music is so full of the idea that I will die without you,
Right.
and the ultimate love. And so it's like, again, there's an external culture supporting all this and giving us all this garbage in our head. And it sells a lot of movies tickets. It sells a lot of music. And yeah, let's face it, it's fun to abdicate from yourself and not be self-responsible.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Like, hey, you take care of me. Let all this stuff, like, you love me the way I can't love myself, because God damn it, I don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's enticing, it's fantasy. But as I once heard, the difference between fantasy and reality is hard work. So you can live in fantasy and then crash without your seatbelt, because that ain't gonna work. And a lot of times it takes a midlife crisis, or it takes a few really intense heartbreaks, and Jesus, what do I keep doing wrong? Oh yeah, I expect them to love me more than I love myself. Damn, that doesn't work. So the other side is, instead of you complete me, it's more of a, I have so much love within me, it overflows, and you are the gift that I share it with. Again, may sound new age hoity-toity, but it's more like, I live love, I am love, and I have love to offer you,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, I need you to give me things that I can't give myself. And I want to be clear, it's not like, oh, I can live in on the hillside by myself and I have everything I need and I love myself and I'm great. Far from it. We're relational creatures. We're wired for partnership. You make my life bigger and richer, as opposed to you complete me. And when you stop making my life bigger and richer, we're going to really talk.
Yeah, we need to have a conversation.
When I stop making your life bigger and richer, yeah, we got to talk, because we ain't living in the 1920s where it's enough just to procreate.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's even also not enough just to love someone as well. I think that there's a lot of other factors in
No,
there.
and that's a huge thing I say too. That's what broke up my marriage. There was love.
Yeah.
And I was, tooting the Beatles, all you need is love, throughout my 20s and part of my 30s. But then I got it. I grew up. I was like, oh, I also need emotional safety. I need trust. I need respect. Damn, this stuff's much more complicated than I thought. But that's the truth. And if I don't got those things, can't live with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So just before, as we begin to wrap up, I have a final question here, and we have really touched on this through the whole episode. So, but I just wanted to see if you've got anything else to add. What would you suggest a man or a woman do not to repeat the same mistakes or patterns in the next relationship? So obviously, life is one whole lesson. But do you have any words of wisdom to leave us with there?
Well, I mean, it sounds maybe asinine, but first know what the mistake is.
No, that's super useful.
I mean, honestly, the mistake that I find that's typical is I was unwilling to deal with a part of myself that you brought out of me. And so instead of really using that as a teaching, I decided that you, as my partner or ex, were no good for me.
Right.
Where if I can extract the lesson. So one of the lessons I got out of my prior marriage was I need visibility, trust, emotional safety, respect. That was huge. So that was a game changer. So I knew the next relationship had to have some of those entities. I did have another relationship after my marriage, and one of the key lessons was there's got to be congruence. She wanted to have a child. She was in her early 40s. I didn't. We tried to wiggle our way through that with multiple breakups. And now I'm in another relationship that I've been in for 14 months. And I keep having my teachings in that one. And, it's very much of how do I stay connected when I want to, take space, or, when I feel upset, or, so it's all a journey. And I do feel like my current relationship is giving me gifts like I haven't experienced before, precisely because I've continually paid attention to what's happening to me, so that I can continue to expand my relational abilities to have the greatest love and partnership that I want and I know I deserve.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Oh my gosh, that's such a beautiful note to end. Thank you. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they go to do that?
Sure. StuartMotola.com. That's StuartMotola.com. I run a weekly Facebook Live, 9 a.m. Mountain Time on Fridays. I'll be doing one this Friday. And I also do a free men's relationship tool. So it's relationship tools for men. And that's a free weekly Zoom call Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And I'm always talking to dudes, and it's exciting to help guys get game where they don't feel like they have much.
I love it. I think the work you do is super important. And now I'm going to pop everything that we need in the show notes. So you can go to rebellove.com/Stuart, and I'll put all of the information and all of the links that we've just mentioned in there as well. Stuart, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like we could talk all day.
Thank you, Talia. It's been awesome. Appreciate you taking the time.
You too. I appreciate you taking the time.
All right. So.
Thanks for listening to the Rebel Love podcast, the podcast about love, sex, relationships, and money. If you like this episode, please support us by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. And find all the details of this episode and more at rebellove.com/podcast.